Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our review of the Champions League semi-final second legs. At San Siro, we saw brilliance from Sommer and Dumfries and Yamal, and maybe the greatest Champions League semi-final of them all. The action in this one was anything but lazy, but what a moment with that winner from Davide Fratesi. And in Paris, Arsenal continued their trophy quest, but in the end, they were second best. PSG are looking magnifique, but when they face Inter, will they continue their streak? My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, your friend of mine, Taylor Rockwell. Hello, Taylor.
Hello, Ryan. That introduction was wonderful, almost as wonderful as the Fratesi goal itself, which was an incredible moment. The energy, the commitment to celebrating with the supporters. I loved that one. I loved his post-match interview in which he said the only thing that was going through his head as he did the kind of pump fake shot was, if I don't score this, I am forking dead. I'll use the good place vernacular there. So I like that he was able to score. I like that celebration, and I like your introduction all rolled together.
Thank you very much. I like that CBS offered no apology for the bad language there after that moment, but that was a fun moment. Also, a small detail from the goal celebration, Taylor, I don't know if you noticed, Fratesi was celebrating so hard, the patches on his arms were coming off, like the patches that were sewn on or ironed on.
The UEFA commitment to quality.
I thought it meant like his tattoos were coming off. Celebrating so hard.
He had them. He had like the water-on tattoos that were just starting to smear.
Graham Ruthven's here. Graham, in Scotland, do you refer to tattoos as patches?
Yeah, sure, they're interchangeable depending on who's winning the Old Firm derby week to week, I guess. Celtic now have 55 titles, so some people are going to have to change their patches, as I covered last week.
Graham, Paramount autoplays games, and after I watched yesterday's game, it tried to autoplay the Old Firm derby, and I audibly said to no one, "Nope," and off it went.
Which one of the last couple months?
Well, for a minute, forgetting that they have... Is it Leon Balogun that they have?
Yes.
I kept throwing me because they kept saying Balogun, and I was like, he left there a long time ago. So I don't know why they are showing this game. Maybe it's to honor his return for Lauren Balogun, and then I realized, different Balogun.
Oh, Taylor, with that behaviour, I thought I couldn't love you anymore, but here we are. Wonderful stuff. Also here, Mr. Joe Lowery. Hello, Joe.
Hey, Ryan, your intro wasn't just good. That was, I'll go so far as to say, a Ryan Bailey classic. Very much at the level of the first game that we're going to discuss. Excellent work all the way across the board.
Yeah, my favourite bit was when you deliberately mispronounced Lamine Yamal, and I thought, that's a little bit strange that Ryan's mispronounced that name. But it was to rhyme it with best semi-final of them all. Just making up words like Lennon McCartney. Good tube. I am the walrus.
Graham, was that a mispronunciation, or was it my truth?
Or maybe that is how they pronounce it in Catalan, and I'm the one that's wrong. It's entirely possible. I still say Bruno Fernandes.
Ryan's always got a plan. If I've learned one thing from his introductions, Ryan's always got a plan with his mispronunciations. I also love that we have now rebranded Patches O'Houlihan to Tattoos O'Houlihan in the first 5 minutes of today's show. I will exclusively be saying it that way from this point forward.
Oh man, it gets more impenetrable as it goes.
Yes, it does.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. We are not a members club here. We are open to all. No in-jokes here on the Total Soccer Show. But if you'd like to support us, by the way, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you can do so. You've got bonus episodes, bonus video content, and, of course, access to the Discord server. All the cool kids are hanging out there. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you can support us. A please and a thank you. All right, Joe. Big game. Very big game to talk about here. You know which one we're going to kick off with, don't you?
Phoenix Rising 1, Houston Dynamo 4.
That's second, actually.
Right,
First off, we're going to go to San Siro. Inter 4, Barcelona 3, 7-6 on aggregate for Internazionale here. Perhaps the greatest semi-final series of this competition and any other. That's a debate we should definitely have. Inter 2-0 up, then 3-2 down, then a 93rd minute equaliser, and then that aforementioned David Fratesi swear-inducing 99th minute winner. Barcelona, Joe, trotting around in their Wolfsburg kits. They were very good as well, but not quite enough here. What do you make of this one? A modern classic, is that fair to say? Do we have enough time?
Very much so, yes. And you're right about the Wolfsburg kits, by the way. I hadn't made that connection. I think we had maybe talked about it before. Those need to be burned. As far as this game is concerned, it happens so rarely for me because I feel like one of the things that I try to bring to this show is like watching games really closely and taking lots of notes and having like good understandings of how games flow and of the tactical battles. This is one of those games where I kind of just tossed my notebook, my proverbial notebook I type on my computer, to the side. I didn't check my computer anywhere. Like this game was so off the rails so often that I there was a certain point at which I just tried to soak it in and tried to stop like taking detailed notes on every single aspect of the game. I did do that ultimately. Like went back through and watched pieces and bits. I'm not just trying to, not show up
You're
today.
still you.
But this game was so much fun. I think it opened up with Chris Whittingham and Ray Hudson, who are just a great duo. I'm very much enjoying those two. It opened up with Chris Whittingham and Ray Hudson talking about how if this game was half as good as the first leg, we were in for a treat. It was more than half as good as the first leg. It was every bit basically as good as the first leg, which felt impossible. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how we got this lucky with the semifinals, but all I know now is that if the final is a dud, and it might be, I don't know, maybe we'll talk about that later, it doesn't matter and we can't complain about it because we just got probably the best two-legged tie in Champions League history. I had so much fun.
I genuinely don't know if a final with PSG in it, this particular PSG, can be a dud. So I am very excited for it, but I hear your hesitation and consternation, Joe. I loved everything about this game. I loved the commentary as well. I love that it was the Jan Sommer save that almost killed Ray Hudson. That was the moment when the scream went to the next level for him. If Messi had made that save, I think that's the only way he could have gotten louder. So he definitely added to the atmosphere for sure.
Yeah. By the way, Taylor, if I'm a young upcoming goalkeeper, I'm thinking, what chance is there for the next gen when these old guys are playing in a game of this high quality? I don't know.
Yeah, that save. I mean, to be fair, it does kind of back up Graham's skepticism around Eric Garcia, because it's Garcia who hits that shot, right, that Jan Sommer ends up saving. It is kind of right at him, and I think anywhere else in the goal, and that one's going in. So I guess, to use Joe's favorite phrasing, should have done better, but it is still an incredible save.
It is an incredible save. There's an even better save in the PSG Arsenal game that we're going to talk about later on. But a great tie for the goalkeepers, which is that kind of tells you how the game itself went, because this tie equaled the most goals in a semi-final, Champions League semi-final tie ever. The other game was Liverpool 7, Roma 6 from like a number of years ago. This was better, and I think this was better than, like, if you compare it to other Champions League semi-finals you're thinking of, or just like other Champions League ties, to be honest. You're thinking of the remontada with PSG and Barcelona. You're thinking of the Romantada the following year with Roman and Barcelona, and the Costas Manolas goal, which was excellent. You're thinking of the Spurs comeback against Ajax, the Liverpool comeback against Barcelona from 3-0 down. These are all great classic matches, but they had like a distinct swing from one game to the other, where you didn't have like the two teams going at each other back and forth over the two games. And that's why I think this was the best semi-final, or even like the best two-legged Champions League tie we've ever had, because not just from the first game to the second game it swung back and forth, but you had swings of momentum from the first half of this game to the second half, where you just knew Barcelona after the first leg, where they came back from 2-0 down, they were going to do the same in this game. They were going to have goals in this match. Even late on, you think Barcelona have won it. They had only led for 2 or 3 minutes of regular time over the two ties, but it looked like they were going to time that peaking really, really well. And then you've got 37-year-old Acerbi popping up inside the box to get that equaliser. Then obviously you have the Fratesi moment in extra time as well. So, yeah, this was just pure drama from start to finish. And I mean that, from start to finish. Think about how the first goal in this tie was the Marcus Thuram goal after, 30 seconds or something like that? And it went all the way up until the end of extra time. It was just incredible stuff.
And that's so well said, Graham, and I completely subscribe to the argument that you're making. One point for Graham. I love that Acerbi goal, not just because it's sort of Inter at their best in some ways with some of that direct play. Inter are more than that, but it can be very effective, especially against a team like Barcelona. With that direct play, it's Jan Sommer who just hunks it up the field to Marcus Thuram, who wins that second ball, and then it's Dumfries who crosses it on the floor to Acerbi. The real reason I love the Acerbi goal is I just love a goal by a player who doesn't know how to celebrate, because they don't do it often enough. Acerbi scored, I think, at least one goal every season for Inter in the league since or every season in Serie A, I should say, dating back to his time in Lazio since 2018-19. So he has scored goals before. But just immediately the rigidity to the celebration and how quickly the shirt came off because he felt like that was what you're supposed to do. And the fact that we were still going into extra time at that point, it was just, I know we talked about the Fratesi celebration. This was the one that got me because it was such a pivotal moment in this game. And I thought Inter were dead to rights.
Yeah, I don't know if this was just me, but I like to think I've got a decent knowledge of footballers. But because it was a fish out of water thing where he's in the box and you don't really expect him to be there, there was like 2-3 seconds where they show him celebrating. I'm like, who is that? Who's just scored this really important goal for Inter? Just because you're not used to seeing him.
Who's
Lautaro,
that guy?
you
Who's
look
that,
different.
Who's that Russian gangster with Russian prison tats? I wasn't ready for that when the shirt came off. Those look like
Russian
some
patches, Tony.
Excuse me. Yeah. Sorry, Graham. I got excited about tattoos. Go ahead.
Taylor, can we break down how exactly Inter pulled this one off? I mean, is the short and terse answer that Barca have an insane high line and were pretty gung ho as they usually are? Like, because pound for pound, right?
Yeah.
Our Barcelona, player for player, are a better side. With all due respect to Inter, this is their second Champions League final in 3 seasons. Like, they're an incredibly well organised and good team. But I mean, I went into this series expecting Inter, given the form they went into this series, to suffer, and they pulled off an incredible win.
They did. I mean, and I talked about after the first leg about Barcelona having the Real Madrid fixture at the weekend and maybe having some tired legs, and yet they still went out and tried to take the game to Inter, and they did very much the same thing here, and they were the dominant team, in my mind, for the opening, I guess, 20 minutes until Lautaro Martinez made it 1-0, and then things took a turn. But I think Barcelona, in moments of this game, it felt like, okay, here we go. Here is that Barcelona team that's going to turn this around, that's going to score 3 or 4 goals, and they are going to eclipse this Inter Milan side. And then I don't think they were able to kind of maintain that consistency, maintain that form, and I think a lot of that is to Inter's credit. I think some of it is also Barcelona making some questionable decisions. I am straight up cribbing from Thierry Henry for this one, but for people who didn't see, he did a breakdown or kind of a comparison of how Inter, with the Cherby, scored that equalizer in the 93rd versus how PSG killed off the game yesterday. And he makes a point that Barcelona, in the dying moments of this game before a Cherby equalizes, have multiple opportunities to dribble the ball to the corner flag, to slow things down, to keep possession, to recycle, and they just keep going. And it's very much a live by the sword, die by the sword sort of thing, that if Lamine Yamal cuts inside and scores, he's even more of a legend than he already is. But when he cuts inside and shoots, and then nobody really tracks back defensively, and then Inter are able to play through and away they go, it then takes on a different look of maybe Barcelona being too committed to the attack, feeling themselves just a little bit too much, and by contrast, PSG making smart decisions in how to kill their game off when they were already in a more comfortable position to begin with. So I think a lot of it is Inter kind of effectively nullifying Barcelona for stretches of this game, but I do think there are moments in which Barcelona were maybe their own worst enemy.
Yeah, I agree with that. This was not Barcelona at their best, and I think how they finish off this game or fail to finish it off well is a really good example of that. I do think this Barcelona team is going to be back soon, probably sooner rather than later, even with all of the financial absurdities going on with them.
They play this weekend, I think.
Yeah, they'll be back. No worries. They're also really injured right now. When you think about this team, no Robert Lewandowski, no Jules Koundé, no Balde at left back. That's before you get to goalkeeper or central midfield. I'm not trying to make excuses for this team.
Can I jump in there, Joe?
Yeah,
Hansi
please.
Flick already did. So don't
With
worry.
Lewandowski, when he came onto the field, do you think he was thinking, I've got 5 minutes
Yes,
here?
I
And he's
do.
like, now I've got 35 minutes here. Oh, no.
100%. And you got to be prepared for that. You know, that stuff happens. But yes, that's exactly what I think Robert Lewandowski was thinking. And then he was trying to plan out his next TikTok dance, obviously. Of
course.
But for Barcelona, they're going to be back. And I think we saw maybe a little bit of that lack of maturity from them at times in this game, especially towards the end. Taylor, I take that point well. I also think more than, and this is going to tie into Inter because they deserve a ton of credit here. I think more than the high line biting Barcelona in this game, and they do live with the sword, they die by the sword, it was Barcelona being a bit sloppy in possession.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it was Inter, I think, finding a better balance between defense and attack in this game. If we cast our mind back to the first leg, remember how deep Inter were and how much of the ball they ceded, especially to Lamine Yamal on Barca's right side, their left side, constantly doubling him, trying to deny him any sort of space. To mixed effects, really, in that game. They were so deep so often, and they did defend deeper through long stretches here, especially because they had the lead and were in a really good spot. But in the first 15, 20 minutes of this game, they were a bit more aggressive defensively. And we saw this, it wasn't quite a high press, maybe a high block is a decent way to think about this. For Inter, where they're in that 3-5-2 shape that we know Inzaghi likes to play, but they're engaging Barcelona higher up the field. And the first goal for Inter comes from DeMarco forcing a turnover, popping up in a central area. Dani Olmo's not aware to it. It's an uncharacteristic mistake from Barcelona. It really is. And DeMarco feeds Marcus Thuram in behind. Thuram scores it, and Lautaro finishes, and it's 1-0 Inter. And then the second goal that Inter scored in this game, it's the Çalhanoğlu penalty in first half stoppage time to make it 2-0. that comes from the foul that Kubarsi puts on Lautaro Martinez in the box. That whole counterattack and the whole reason that Martinez is in the box in the first place is that it's Gerard Martin who has a sloppy pass on the left side, sort of right near the midfield line, and Inter pick up the ball after that turnover and race right down the field. So yes, Inter did well to exploit the space behind Barcelona, but I don't think it was the fact that Barcelona left that space open that hurt them in this game. Possession teams are going to do exactly that. I think it was the fact that they didn't control the ball well enough to actually control the context of when and how they lost possession in this game and how that space in behind their backline was used.
Yeah, and a big part of their ineffectiveness when they had the ball was I thought Lamine Yamal had a quiet night, probably one of the quietest games I've seen him have so far, and that was in large part due to the treatment that he was getting from Inter. Some of the tackling early on was quite rough. You feel like reminding these Inter players that he's still like a child that you're basically assaulting. It was right on borderline for some of the Inter players, but they were really effective at doubling up on him and sometimes tripling up on him, and Mkhitaryan was coming over to help Dumfries, which is something we saw in the first leg, but I felt like in the first leg it maybe wasn't all that effective. It was much more effective here where you had Bissek would pinch in behind as well and Barella would then close the channel off inside, and they kind of like boxed him in. And of course there were some dribbling moments where he cut inside and got in past a man. There was a moment right at the end of extra time though when Bastoni just like completely reads him and makes a clean tackle to come away from it, and that kind of felt illustrative of how Yamal's night went.
Graham, first time you said Yamal, thank you for saying it to rhyme with them all. I appreciate that. But can I challenge you on him having a quiet night? Do you mean just by Lamine Yamal's standards? Because, I mean, I'm looking at who scored. He had 9 shots. He hit the woodwork. He got a 9.5 rating as the highest rated player on the pitch.
The woodwork strike comes right at the end, right? Is that one of the moments Taylor was talking about where actually, I know this sounds wild because he came within an inch of scoring, but like in the context, maybe a little bit of game management in that moment might have been wiser. But yeah, true.
I'm just kidding. I agree.
I did think the game. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe I just hold them to the standards. I mean, last week the title of our episode was literally "Is Lamine Yamal the new Messi?" So that kind of tells you how high the standard is for him. But yeah, I thought the game sort of bypassed him. Yeah. Barcelona are so dependent on him creating something, cutting in off the right side.
It's a little bit of a things can be two things in that like. He can be an exceptional player who can be a difference maker, who can get off a lot of shots and require triple teaming from the opposition. But when you are getting those Lionel Messi comparisons, if Lionel Messi doesn't score and his team loses, there's going to be a like, oh, Messi kind of had a down night, even if he did a bunch of stuff. When you are playing at the level that Lamine Yamal has reached, or Lionel Messi has reached, then I think there is always going to be a little bit of pointed criticism if things don't go your side's way or your way on the evening. And there is that shot that goes off the post. There's also, I think he is the one to give up the ball when Barca then have a throw-in, and that's what leads to the counterattack for Inter. So even there, I think he's trying to do too much once again, which is, you could say, a mistake of youth. You could say it's him kind of feeling the weight of expectation on his shoulders. Either way, I think there are those moments that loom a little bit larger than some of the other individual take-ons.
He was no Denzel Dumfries, I'll put it that way. Who had the just the 5 goal contributions over 2 games in the Champions League semi-finals. No biggie for Denzel Dumfries. Yeah, he'll be wanting to play Barcelona every week, because there's just so much space for him to get him behind. He's so effective at that as well. And the way that Inter send those wing-backs forwards with DeMarco on the left and Dumfries on the right, it's like a key part of their game plan under Inzaghi. And actually, I usually think DeMarco is the more effective or like the more bullish in getting forward down the left side. But if you look at the heat map, Gerard Martin was much higher than Eric Garcia, who was obviously is a centre-back playing right-back. So I think that was a really clever tweak by Inzaghi to have Dumfries play that role.
Yeah, Dumfries just ate across these 2 legs, Graham. You're totally right about that. I have a moment down more than any of the goal contributions. It was this moment in the 9th minute that I put in my notes where Dumfries is dribbling down that right side and Gerard Martin just can't keep up and he tries to foul, like he's grabbing at Denzel Dumfries, can't bring him down, and then Dumfries just ends up shouldering Gerard Martin to the ground. Like, one guy tried to pull down the other guy to foul, and then Dumfries just said, nah, I'm going to push you to the ground without doing it in a way that would force the referee to blow the whistle. The play doesn't come to anything, but that was the Denzel Dumfries light flashing bright red early on in this game, that this was going to be an Inter revenue stream. And it absolutely was. I mean, it was in the first leg as well. Inter are a really talented team. And obviously, when I said they were going to win the league, I meant they were going to win the Champions League, however many weeks ago that was. They're a really, really good team. And the cohesion they have in central midfield, despite the age of a lot of those players and the lack of athleticism, the fact that the center backs help cover for that, wing backs who can get back and really commit defensively. a strike pairing that I think is really sharp in how they position themselves against the ball. But then also, it's not a surprise that a team with two really clever forwards in Martinez and Thuram, and a midfield with Nico Barella and Hakan Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan, and the center backs that they have, especially Bastoni, who is unique in how he interprets the center back role for this team. It's not a surprise that this team's also capable with the ball. And I guess looking ahead to the final slightly, I'm curious how Inter will approach some of that stuff. We don't need to dive too deep into it now, but Inter are such a well-rounded team with defensive discipline and attacking creativity. I've been high on them for a really long time under Inzaghi because I think he's gotten something out of this group that is really, really impressive, and it showed across these two legs.
Yeah, a word for those two Inter forwards that you mentioned there, Joe. Lautaro Martinez, I'll start with him because he had his flu game here. He comes off in the first leg with an injury. Yeah. He misses the game at the weekend. He starts here. I was surprised to see him in the lineup starting. I thought he'd be on the bench. By all accounts, he played this game injured. And there were moments where you could see that he was playing injured. And maybe that's not the wisest thing to do in terms of if this had happened a few months ago, maybe you don't do that. But it's coming to the end of the season. Maybe he's just thinking, I'll get through this. I'll get my team to a Champions League final. This now goes into his lore as an Inter Milan legend because he scores the first goal, wins the penalty for the second, has a profound impact, comes off in the second half, injured, I think. And then Thuram, I thought over the two legs, he was on an even higher level. And he's a player who, over the last few months even, I think has got to a level, I didn't know he could be this good. We obviously knew he was a good player at Gladbach. We thought that was a good signing for Inter. But he is so important to this Inter team. And some of the centre-forward play from him in this game in particular was ridiculous, particularly for the winner, where he creates something out of nothing out by the corner flag. He rounds his marker, comes back into the box, and then it pings around. Or it's actually a couple of passes, and Fratesi puts it into the back of the net. But he was a real two-way threat for Inter over the two legs, where he can go in behind, he can come short to absorb a pass, he can create something himself on the dribble. He is an incredible player, and the two of them are such a threat for Inter in that forward line.
Graham, was the Lautaro injury, from what you read, was it a muscle injury?
It was a hamstring injury.
That's what I thought he said, and it sounded
Which
like he
you don't
basically.
play with.
You don't. It sounded like he immobilized it basically, so he wrapped it as tightly as he could, so he didn't have to engage the muscle, which then is even more freakish that he's able to be as effective as he was and play as much as he was, and be as aggressively involved in the celebrations as he was, despite coming off in the 71st. So I echo your awe of that performance, but also of that strike partnership, because I think they were exceptional once again and did such a good job of alleviating pressure and even just kind of holding up in moments and having some good combined interplay to just take the pressure off of Inter. Because I don't think this was a flawless game. I think the result is pretty exceptional for Inter, but if you look at that midfield, which I think of as being kind of a pillar of stability and consistency, I think if you add up Mkhitaryan, Çalhanoğlu, and Barella, you are at 49 of 74 for passing. That's around 66%. And Mkhitaryan completed, I think, 85% of his passes. So very off passing night from Çalhanoğlu and Barella. Barella especially, it felt like, was coughing up possession, giving the ball away. And I think that is largely because of the Barcelona pressure and how intense they were and what they were trying to do. And so Inter have moments when they are sloppy and they are giving the ball away. And there's other teams that I think fold and sit deeper and just kind of hold on for dear life. And I think it's a testament to this Inter team, but also the talent they have, that when that midfield is maybe under fire, you have wingbacks who can create from nothing. You have forwards who can find ways to create and kind of change the momentum. And I think that is what made the difference on the day. Plus, an old tattooed center back scoring a beautiful goal. What more do you need?
What more do you need? Indeed. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, a bit more on this one, and of course, PSG's victory over Arsenal. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. Graham, I know I presume you were watching the UK broadcast of these games this week. Was there any point where you were watching these games and you just thought, I wonder what Guy Ritchie and Stanley Tucci would make of this action? Did that ever cross your mind?
That crosses my mind pretty much every time I watch a Champions League match. If only CBS had some way to satisfy that desire. Tell me, Ryan, that they do.
Actually, funny enough, you mentioned it. They had a Beckham and Friends show, which was like a commentary and a pre and post match with David Beckham, Stanley Tucci, and Guy Ritchie, who I didn't recognise actually until they mentioned his name. It was a broadcast.
So I saw a clip of this and thought to myself, did Guy Ritchie know what he was signing up for? He did not seem engaged. Even for Guy Ritchie, did not seem particularly engaged in the whole exercise.
Stanley Tucci had a movie to promote. So let's one other thing I wanted to talk about this game. By the way, I don't know if you guys saw the fans.
Are you also promoting that movie? why did that?
Stanley Tucci?
I saw he had a commercial for a movie in the break. I guess that's why he was there. He seemed very charming, if not full of analysis. There was clips they showed on the CBS broadcast and have been online, Taylor, of Milan fans, Inter fans leaving San Siro before the equalising goal.
Unforgivable. I've got no sympathy. It was like 3-2 in a Champions League semi-final, and this game had been wild. What are they doing?
So they weren't now back in, and like Thierry Henry was like, "Yeah, fair enough. There's a 1 goal in this Champions League semi-final, and you've left. What do you want? Like, why would you leave at that point? I don't know. That was wild.
When they cut to Javier Zanetti in the stands, he looked for all the world like a person who had considered leaving and then did not, because he didn't look just relieved because they had equalized. He looked relieved because they had equalized, and he was also still there. So at least some people did stay, but no sympathy. Stay in your seats until the game is over.
Yeah, indeed. By the way, I've to give flowers to CBS for their coverage, because I always watch post-match and pre-match, and it's always very good. I just thought the Guy Ritchie and Stanley Tucci dynamic.
Are you now promoting CBS?
Sorry?
Are you now promoting CBS?
No, I'm trying to be fair, Graham, because I think they do a good job. Anyway, let's move on, shall we, to Wednesday's action. They do. Come on.
What are you up to?
They have a lot of coverage in a lot of different leagues.
Sincere Ryan makes me nervous.
All right, I need to make another joke real quick. Anyway, PSG 2, Arsenal 1. 3-1 to PSG on aggregate, this one. Paris Saint-Germain, easy for me to say, heading to its second Champions League final. What do we have here? Fabian Ruiz and Achraf Hakimi with the goals in this one. They put it pretty much out of reach, despite Bukayo Saka with his consolation and his good miss? Bad miss? Can a miss be good? Not sure. Anyway, there was a late Arsenal surge, and Arsenal had some good periods in this game. Gigi Donnarumma, once again, Taylor, was fantastic in this game. I think if I was an Arsenal fan, I'd walk away from this thinking, we were good, fair enough, we played well, but we just were second best, and you can't be too upset about it. Is that fair?
You were very close to what Arteta actually said, except it was... But basically, they won because they had a better goalie, which shows that we were the better team, so...
They actually won the Champions League.
I'm very proud of my team. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah. Kind of diminishing with faint praise, I feel like. But there is also probably, if you're an Arsenal supporter, a feeling of what could have been, because they have 2 very good chances in the first 8 minutes, both of which are saved by Donnarumma. The second one is especially amazing if people have not seen it. It's another long throw. Did not know Thomas Partey had that in the locker. Is that a thing we've seen a bunch and I just haven't paid attention to?
I think this is kind of a newer wrinkle, and we saw it over and over and over. There was a lot of long throws in this game from Arsenal.
Phil Stoke. Yeah. Everyone wants to sign Liam Delap. Arteta's interested in Rory this summer after this game.
But man, it's the first one is like a deflected. It's I think a header and then a shot. But the second one in the 8th minute, that's the one where it kind of bounces clear to Odegaard at the top of the box, who absolutely smashes it. And Donnarumma gets down low, makes the save, slightly injures himself, but is able to go. But this is with PSG having at least 8 players in their own box, maybe even 9. Like, they had everybody back trying to defend this long throw, but didn't really keep anybody forward. It seems like a thing that they slowly learned from and adjusted to as the game went on. But it could have been 2-0 inside the first 8 minutes. It probably should have been 1-0 inside the first 8 minutes, if not for Donnarumma being exceptionally good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going over the top here, right? That Donnarumma save, I think it's one of the best saves I've ever seen. Everything considered, as you say, Taylor, the fact that it comes through a crowd of bodies, it's hit with the replays don't do it justice. You need to see it in real time, because Odegaard absolutely smacks that thing. It is along the ground, so there's no height on it. He has to get right down, considering he's like over 6 foot. He's a giant, Donnarumma. It's one of those saves that a goalkeeper makes every so often that you're like, they're not human. That is not a human thing to do. I thought it was outrageous.
Agreed. If you watch enough soccer, you start to be able to be like, oh, okay, this is a goal. Like, a goal is happening right here with this shot. Or when the ball kind of rolls wide and you know someone is rushing on to hit it as hard as they can, you just know it's going in. And so when it doesn't, it looms even larger. It stands out even more. And this was one where I was like, oh, that's the way Odegaard hits this, how truly he strikes that one through traffic. It, for all the world, feels like it's going in the back of the net. And then it doesn't. And I thought for a moment that maybe we wouldn't see Donnarumma again, because either he separated his shoulder or sprained his wrist. But he stayed and made some more saves and was good coming for some of those long throws and some of those corners, and just really, I think the best thing a goalkeeper can be is steady. And I think that's what Donnarumma was on the day. He didn't really give up any clear-cut opportunities until maybe that Saka one that Ryan mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and Arsenal really did control the opening stages of this game, which is impressive, right? On the road, they'd taken a defensive posture for a lot of the first leg. They go out there and they are controlling the ball. They are putting PSG under real pressure. I also, Taylor, I think you talked about the chance that comes after the long throw, right? Although maybe you're talking about the Odegaard shot. There was another long throw that Martinelli, I think, gets his foot on. And then even beyond that, there's the Declan Rice header that goes wide left that Donnarumma doesn't have any part in. Arsenal have legit chances in the first 8 minutes of this game. 3 of them, I think, by my count. And they were in PSG's half a lot. And PSG looked like they'd been punched in the mouth a little bit right out of the gate. Then momentum started to turn. And it wasn't PSG wrestling possession away from Arsenal so much as it was them finding opportunities to go and counterattack. You get that Kvaratskhelia shot off the post from distance in the 17th minute that sort of jolted me back to life in this game. And then you have the Arsenal counterattack in the the PSG counterattack in the 23rd minute after Arsenal turned the ball over, which became a little bit of a theme from them at times in possession in this game, sort of mirroring Barcelona and some of their deeper possession struggles. You have that counterattack that PSG find, and then you have the goal, which is sort of out of nowhere and is not quite fully against the run of play because PSG had a couple of flashes in the attacking half. But it's a free kick for PSG after Kvaratskhelia drives downfield after taking the ball off of Declan Rice. And eventually the ball ends up on the foot of Fabian Ruiz and is a ridiculous goal. Like, the technical execution on this is absurd. The Hakimi goal later is nice for PSG as well. This is off the charts, just aesthetic. And Arsenal never quite found their way back fully from this moment. They had some chances in the second half as well, but they were also still sloppy. As much as I am a fan of the Pirate himself, Yar, Miles Lewis-Skelly's game, I thought this was a poor game from him, which happens, right? The dude is a teenager. It's okay. I'm not trying to say that he was the reason why Arsenal lost in this game, but he's been asked to play a crucial role for this Arsenal team in possession, where he drifts all the way into central midfield, even at times drifting from left back to playing as a central center back in some of their build-up patterns. And I just didn't think he was very good in this game. Forget the handball, which was a kind of absurd moment and weird use of VAR that didn't end up mattering, thankfully, because of the save. But, I thought MLS in possession in this game, and even defensively with some of his reactions and Arsenal in general, I think struggled to cope with PSG's counterattacking play. I didn't think Arsenal were great on the ball for too much of this game to give themselves a chance to claw a couple of goals back after they needed to claw a couple of goals back.
As much as we've talked about him, only now do I realize his initials are MLS. That threw me for a moment. So thank you for that, Joe.
What got me, Taylor, is I saw a British person I follow on Blue Sky tweeting about MLS in a way that I was not normal, and I had to read it 3 times to figure out what was happening, and then I put it together.
Was it Graham?
Blue Sky blaming MLS for this result was like, what?
Yeah,
how are they involved?
We're all going to have to call it the MLS because Lewis Skelly is going to take MLS for himself. So,
yes. Yep. Good call.
Joe,
pirating it, you could say, Graham.
Oh, well done.
Oh boy, Joe. To your point, I did not think he was great on the evening either. And I think after that goal, a very good kind of representation of the way this game went is in the 30th minute, so the goal's the 27th. In the 30th minute, it's another PSG break because Lewis Skelly kind of picks up the ball, tries to play kind of like an interior diagonal low pass. It's just immediately cut out. PSG go the other way, and it ends up being a fairly tame shot from Barcola. And it's those moments that you kind of can't give up. You have to kind of keep control. You have to keep suffocating the opposition. And I think, in my mind, that speaks to how much that first goal was just a dagger to Arsenal. Because you're right that it wasn't fully against the run of play, but Arsenal were very dominant, were causing problems. The long throw seemed like every single time it was going to create some level of chaos, but they were still creating other opportunities and really controlling the game. And then PSG score kind of out of nowhere, and it's that reminder of oh yeah, they can do that whenever they want, and they are that deadly. And I think you can just see that little dip in confidence, that little dip in consistency from Arsenal from that point on, exemplified by Lewis Skelly giving that ball away. And it's not to say he was the only one doing that. There were plenty of Arsenal players who I think were a little sloppier than expected, but that one did stand out to me, especially because he was being asked to play a Weston McKennie level number of positions.
That's quite the compliment for young MLS. I think there were 2 air out the balloon moments. I actually kind of think the Kvaratskhelia off the post moment was a moment where PSG realised how they could attack Arsenal, and that's one of the things that makes PSG scary. They can do the whole tiki-taka thing where the opposition has 2 touches of the ball in 20 minutes. But here, in this match, like, they didn't have a good game by those usual metrics, but they can win the game when they don't have the ball, where they kill an opponent on the counter-attack, and they've always got threat through Dewey and Barcola. Dembele, who comes off the bench in the second half, he was injured, so only played like 20 minutes or whatever. Kvaradona as well is such a threat. I think what's underplayed about Kvaradona is how much work off the ball he puts in. I think because on the ball he's quite light. He sometimes slows down the game. He's a bit languid. That people then extrapolate that out to, oh well, he doesn't do a lot of defensive work, which is completely incorrect about Kvaratskhelia. That's one of the reasons he's worked so well for this PSG team. So there was the Kvaratskhelia off the post moment, and then the Saka miss, where actually after going 2-0 down, Arsenal do really well to rally in that moment where they get the Saka goal. If that goes back to 2-2, you kind of wonder if it's similar to the Villa game, where it just felt like the opposition against PSG had so much momentum that they were really kind of pegged back. And this is still a young PSG team, and we should remember they are a work in progress. Like, after 5 games of this competition, they were going out. They'd scored 3 goals. They'd won 1 match against Girona, I think, or they'd drawn that match. Anyway, it looked like they were going out of this competition. So there are still moments where you look at PSG, and as much as I think they're kind of complete in their profile and what they can do, as a group, as a collective, there's still moments where they shake, where they wobble, which is that's to be expected in the latter stages of the Champions League. But yeah, those 2 moments went against Arsenal, and they're out.
There's also an adaptability to this PSG team that I think we've talked about before, but we certainly haven't seen from different iterations of the club going back a few years. And I think a lot of that is the credit to Luis Enrique and the players for buying in and sort of playing as a collective unit. But one thing that I kept noting was the positioning of Achraf Hakimi in this game, because I think of him as almost like another forward, oftentimes, like very much of it, like as like moving centrally, and like Doué goes wide, and then suddenly Achraf Hakimi is your striker. In this game, routinely in the build-up and in possession, he is just part of a back 4, and he is sometimes even staying deeper than Nuno Mendes on the other side, and that is not a thing we've seen from Hakimi very often. And some of that is because Lewis Skelly is getting forward, Jurriën Timber getting forward, so both of them were staying back, and I think that's why Kvaradona on the left and Barcola on the right had to track back so often. But Hakimi is playing that fullback role, doing more of the defensive stuff, and I think seems okay with it. But then in the second half, I'm pretty sure there's an adjustment from Luis Enrique that you have Hakimi then basically sitting on Merino and tracking him as he moves centrally. And Merino had been a big part of how Arsenal were able to find some pockets of space and some joy in possession, and he kind of helped create overloads throughout the first half. And once Hakimi is sitting on him and they're basically just giving up that left side to Lewis Skelly, you can have, and sometimes Martinelli, you can have like a center back slide over, as Marquinhos occasionally would. You could have João Neves come over and help, but Hakimi basically takes Merino out of that second half, and I think it's why Arsenal, again, kind of struggled to create. And then for all of his defensive positioning and good hard work, it is then Hakimi from that good defensive positioning and winning the ball back, bombing forward to get the second goal. So even when he defends, he is still going to score. But this was a much more defensive performance in a good way than I can recall seeing from Hakimi in a very long time.
Yeah, very impressive indeed. And Joe, another player you mentioned earlier, Fabian Ruiz, obviously the goal scorer here. I feel like I've been sleeping on him a little bit. And like he just speaks to the overall massive quality of this PSG team. Obviously, it made me think, oh, wait, at the Euros he was like annoyingly good. In a particular game I remember watching with Spain. But he just seems to be like a really key component of that midfield. He's like a glue in that
elder
midfield
statesman,
as well.
Ryan. He's the oldest player the world has ever known. He's the oldest player for this. He's 29. They kept talking about that, and I guess it's because this team is so young. But the number of times the commentators referred to him as like the elder statesman of this PSG team and the older veteran leader that this team has needed was humbling for me.
I love Fabian Ruiz. You're right, Ryan. He was great at the Euros. He has been a high-level central midfielder for a long time. Getting to play on a team this good has raised his profile, certainly for us, and I think for many, many, many others as well. But what makes Fabian Ruiz, I think, so special is his technique. And we see it on the goal. He's not a goal scorer. This is his first ever goal in the Champions League, and he's played 40-something Champions League games in his career. He is almost impossible to press. That is, I think, what at its core, that is for me what makes this PSG team so fun, is that you have Fabian Ruiz and Vitinha, who you are maybe better giving up pressing. Just forget it. Like, throw your hands up, track back, than you are actually trying to press those two players. They are unbelievable on the ball. Like, it is those two. It is Pedri. There are a handful of other players. in global soccer who are just so... It's fruitless. It's like almost fruitless to press those two guys. And Ruiz is so silky smooth in how he rotates through midfield. At times he joins the attacking line for PSG. Other times he can rotate deeper downfield. John Neves is no slouch either, but he is a little bit more destroyer, at least than those other two guys are.
He's my favorite.
Yeah, he's a fun little guy, no doubt about it. And the midfield seems to complement itself really well and complement this team really well. And Ruiz is obviously a crucial part of all that. Great to see him pop up in the final third and with that goal in the way that he did. And basically anytime I can watch Fabian Ruiz and Vitinha play soccer, I'm pretty happy about it.
There you go. Wonderful stuff. One more quick break from us. When we come back, a bit more on this one and a look ahead to the final. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our Champions League review. Graham, Arsenal are going to be finishing this season trophyless. Do they deserve that? Doesn't feel like they deserve that.
Well, they didn't win the games to win a trophy, so
that is accurate.
I mean,
Literalism.
we referenced the Arteta stuff at the top of the show. Like I thought it was a little bit classless, not very gracious, and also very debatable. I don't think it was clear cut that Arsenal were the better team over the two legs. Like, yeah, they had chances, but the two PSG goals in this game come from really sloppy Arsenal defensive moments, particularly the second one where Thomas Partey is sleeping on the edge of his box and Hakimi nicks in, and that's the PSG goal. So, like, does that not factor into your assessment of a team? Arsenal have also won, 3 Premier League games out of the last 10. Now, I know a lot of that is because they've been resting players, but they weren't resting players at the weekend when they lost at home to Bournemouth. So I think this is an Arsenal team that has... The generous reading of their season is they know more than ever before what they need this summer. I think they need more attacking quality. That much is absolutely clear. We can debate whether that is a number 9. I personally am a fan of Kai Havertz. I think the easier position to upgrade is left wing, where there's an interest in Nico Williams, who can maybe get someone a little bit cheaper and get another central defender in or a fullback. I think they need more creativity. Like Martin Odegaard, we haven't really talked about this on the show, but it's a big talking point among Arsenal fans. Martin Odegaard has not been the same player since he returned from injury, and that has let down Arsenal badly down the stretch. Declan Rice has stepped up, and he is getting better and better as a player. I think at this point you could argue that he's a top 3 central midfielder in the world for what he offers this Arsenal team and for England as well, unfortunately. But Arsenal needs more creativity, more attacking threat, and if anything, they've regressed this season. And I also don't love the whole Arteta woe is me routine that he does on occasion, as he did after this game. I am not a psychologist, but I don't know if the poor us sentiment helps build a stronger mentality. So,
what was the poor us?
Just that, well, we spoke about it at the top of the show that he came out and very bullishly said we were the better team, we've been the best team in the Champions League this season. He might be giving a different message to his players, which is entirely possible. But as an Arsenal fan, I wouldn't be too encouraged to hear that. Frankly.
A question for you, Graham, and you, Ryan, like being more familiar with the British press than I certainly. I think he's justified, and I think talking about the limitations of the squad and the injuries they have had, and I think he alluded to that with his some of the players were missing, and to not have the depth that they do for us to play as well as we did, it's a good credit to the boys, and I think that is all very good praise. If he had come out and said, credit to PSG, they were exceptional in this tie, they did some things that I've never seen a team do before, and they just made the difference. Is he getting raked over the coals? If he is more accommodating and praising of PSG, is he going to get more criticism from the British press, and so he has to kind of deflect, or is this just Arteta being Arteta?
I think this is Arteta being Arteta. Okay. I think we've seen this before with officiating and referees. He likes a moan in the media. I think if he comes out and praises PSG, there's not a single headline. People just assume that's standard post-match stuff. And he, a few days before this game, he made this kind of garbled point about Arsenal would have effectively won 2 Premier League titles or something because we've been up against a Man City team that's
titles.
Expected titles, which people love talking about expected things in soccer. So I don't know. I don't think he's had a great few days. But frankly, what he says in the media maybe doesn't matter so much. It's about how he sets up this team. And there's absolutely no doubt, to pull back my Arteta criticism a little bit here, there's absolutely no doubt that this team is in a much better position now than it was when he came in. And it feels like this team they are in a position where they can target that final step. It's just about getting those 1 or 2 players and maybe tweaking the approach. I want Arsenal to take more risks. They're a very risk-averse team. And they did that at points in this match, and that's why I found the first 20 minutes so exhilarating, was that they were so aggressive, Arsenal, and there were little things they did to set up, like the way that they pushed Urian Timber slightly infield to create that separation with Saka so he could get one-on-one with Mendes was like impressive, and the attitude was impressive. I just want to see more of that kind of thing from Arsenal on a regular basis.
To fight Arteta's corner a little bit and to maybe address your question, Taylor, I don't think, in all fairness, he's not the only coach out there who will moan after a game and will stick up for his boys under all circumstances. I mean, it's not demonstrably untrue what he said. That Arsenal were quality in this game, right? And I'd argue the majority of coaches are more on the spectrum of moaning and complaining in the media than saying, well, the other guys were great.
Yeah, I mean, Hansi Flick, to your point, did more or less the exact same thing, and we're not really talking about it. I think that is probably, for me at least, because be it the algorithm or the way that the coverage has actually gone, there has been a lot of sort of tongue-in-cheek jesting at Arsenal's expense about them not winning anything again. And so I think that is what's coming into my mind, is that when it's a manager who isn't winning anything, even if he is making this team better, and I agree with Graham, he absolutely is, I think it comes off more as sour grapes, more defensive, more. It's not my fault. We're doing everything. It's everybody. Like, we can't do anything about this. Like, it just feels a little bit too. Don't blame me in a way at a time when people are kind of like pointing at Arsenal in jest, and maybe I'm connecting dots that shouldn't be connected or only connected by me. Joe would never connect these dots, I'm guessing. But it's where it just rings a little bit more hollow in my mind than if he had come out and said, like, yeah, credit to them. They were exceptional in the evening. We created some good chances. I'm so proud of my team and what we've been able to accomplish. We just ran up against a team that I think is going to win the whole thing. Like, I think nobody has issues with that.
Yeah.
And I come away being like, that's a great answer.
He just went a little bit far in some of his comments. Like, the trophy list thing, I think, is just social media memery. Like, it's so difficult to win trophies, particularly the Champions League and the Premier League. So the fact that they haven't won those things...
They should try the Europa League.
Yeah, well, that's the Man United and Tottenham route. But like, the quote here is 100%. I don't think there's been a better team than Arsenal in the competition. I don't agree with that. Is there many people who would agree with that? Like, it's just a little bit far, like, I guess.
And there's that line between backing your players and kind of bigging them up in public and saying a thing that I feel like even his players might be like, no one's better than us. Like, oh, okay, I don't know about that. I did love that Lucho, by comparison, I think when asked about what PSG have accomplished, was like, League of Farmers, right? That's where we play, and yet we've eliminated all these other teams. That's interesting. Just want to point that one out. Yeah, credit to him for the way he handled that one. I guess it's easier when you've just won and gone to the final.
I think it's quite clear for Arsenal, and this is my final word on this, if they'd hired more pickpockets, done more light bulb stunts, and had Salt Bay on board a little bit more this season, things would have been different. That's all I'm saying.
This guy gets it.
Clear as that. I thank you, Joe. Yeah, Joe. Let's look ahead, shall we, to the Champions League final, May 31st, 3 p.m. Eastern. We'll have PSG taking on Inter in Munich. I think would it be amusing if PSG win the Champions League the first season they don't have Kylian Mbappe and Real Madrid don't win anything?
Yes,
absolutely it was. It absolutely would be. And we've got some other Real Madrid chat and some tactical stuff coming up later on this week. I'm totally here for that. This PSG team will be the favorites in the final, right? They have the more dynamic attacking play. I think they have the better squad overall. They have a better team than Inter, as high as I am on Inter. Now, that's not to say that Inter can't win this thing, because they just took down a giant in Barcelona, and they are a very good team for pretty much all of the reasons that we talked about already earlier on in this show. But the pressure is going to be on PSG. We talked about this as a Barcelona-PSG final. One of those two teams made it in. The other one, who didn't make it in, Barcelona, lost to a team that is now going to be an underdog. It is that simple for this competition. I'm fascinated to see how this game is going to play out. I think if you're Inter, you're first and foremost trying to replicate a big chunk of what you did against Barcelona, in that you're probably going to trend towards sitting a little bit deeper in that final in your 5-3-2 block. You're going to try to make it difficult for PSG's front three and also for Hakimi, as Taylor mentioned, who often pops up as a forward in that attacking line, especially wide on the right side. You're going to try to make it difficult for those guys to beat you in obvious open pockets of space, and you're going to try to be really, really dangerous going forward. Now, PSG are not going to have the same luck in some ways they did at times in this tie against Arsenal, because you can't necessarily bank on some of those ridiculous efforts from Fabian Ruiz finding the back of the net. But there's real juice in this PSG team that Inter are going to have to deal with. And on the other side of things, Dumfries is not maybe going to have the same joy that he did against Barcelona, because Nuno Mendes is a more responsible defender. So again, lots of fascinating matchups. You can take this in a half dozen different ways, more than that. But it is going to be a clash in styles for long stretches. Also, how Dembele fits into the equation. We didn't even talk about how he didn't start in this game against Arsenal because he was dealing with a little hamstring injury as well, I believe. He comes off the bench in this game. The way he interprets the striker position is different from even how Ferran Torres interprets it for Barcelona. Another winger turned striker where Dembele, I think, is a little more fluid in his movements and a little rangier in how he shifts around from that 9 position. Yeah, it's going to be a really fun game. I'm excited about it a lot. It's not the final that I sort of thought we were going to get, as we've already discussed, but that doesn't mean it's any... Well, it is maybe a little less intriguing, but not dramatically less intriguing.
Yeah, Graham, I presume PSG are favourites for that final, but I don't think Inter are going to be intimidated on the same note there. But Simone Inzaghi said this week, we've beaten the 2 best teams in Europe to get here, in obviously Bayern Munich and Barcelona. So I don't know whether that's
Not
a little bit of shade... yeah, a little bit of shade for Inter's upcoming opponents there, but they're not, as I say, they're not going to be intimidated. They have a really solid chance here as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I've kind of learned my lesson writing off this Inter Milan team. I've done it repeatedly, not just this season, but in past seasons when they made the Champions League final. Simone Inzaghi has put together a team that I think is quite clear is more than the sum of their parts. And that's not to say that they don't have outstanding players. I think, to Joe's point that he made earlier, like Bastoni is a top 3 central defender in Europe with what he can do. We've highlighted how dangerous Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram are. I think DeMarco and Dumfries, Joe's absolutely right, that's going to be a key battle in this final. And the thing about Inter is, obviously, a large part of the focus will be on this being a sort of mission or potential mission accomplished moment for PSG, who have targeted this trophy since the Qatari owners have come in, 15 years ago, and that's absolutely true. For Inter, they also see this as a mission accomplished moment. Inter are a club, we talk about Real Madrid being a club that revolves around European success in the European Cup. Inter do exactly the same thing, where they had a dominant period back like decades ago, obviously won it under Jose Mourinho, and since then they've been desperate to prove themselves at the top level, and obviously they made the Champions League final 2 seasons ago, so they've had this carrot dangling in front of their nose for the last couple of seasons. So this is another big moment of culmination for this team and this club.
Definitely so. Fun fact for you, Graham. Inter, in every team they faced in a Champions League or European Cup final ever, last 5 I should say actually, but they were all chasing a treble. PSG are chasing a treble. Bayern Munich were in 2010 when Inter won the treble as well. They're always up against a team who's got a lot on the line. Very interesting.
Yeah, just as well Man United didn't face them in 90... Oh, no, wait, they did, actually. They got in the round of 16 and beat them. Anyway, scratch that point.
Yeah. I was Juventus in the semi, right? That year?
Yes, it was Juventus. That's the Roy Keane goal, right? Yeah.
That's right. And dismissal. Is that right?
He's sent off. Scholes gets sent off as well. Or
Very good.
Suspended. Anyway, let's stop talking about something that happened like 28 years ago. Joe, you got
my sound went out, and then I came right back in for this conversation. So I'm all in for this part of the show.
Yeah, there we go.
I was about to unload everything I had on that, but look at the time. Shit.
Oh, we're right out of time.
Man.
We're just one last moment for Taylor's final thoughts on the upcoming Champions League final. It's going to be, we always hope they're not going to be scrappy 0-0, 1-0 affairs, but this one's got the ingredients to be pretty open and good, right?
Really open, I don't know about. I think Barcelona PSG would have been a foosball game of just back and forth, like chaos. I think this one, I said it in the introduction, I don't think this PSG team can play conservative and bunkered, and I think even if they try to, they're still going to break with 4 and 5 attackers and be ruthless in their counter. So I think they will create more openings and create more drama immediately, and then I think it will be about Inter limiting the impact of that, sort of nullifying some of what they're doing, and then growing into the game and finding their own opportunities. And they have proven time and time again this season that they are more than capable of doing that. So I think even if it ends up being 1-0, I still think it will be a very captivating 1-0 from start to finish.
Good stuff indeed. There we go. Champions League review completed. Look how far we've come, guys, from the group stage phasing all the way to now, right? Good tourney. Well done, UEFA. We praise you when you do a good change dramatic to the schedule and the fixtures. Joe Lowery, thank you very much indeed for your contributions to this episode.
I'm not giving UEFA credit. I feel like the format had no impact on my enjoyment of this competition whatsoever. It just helps when you have the greatest semifinal tie in soccer history. I'm here for that, though.
There you go. We're all about balance. Thank you very much, Joe. Taylor Rockwell, pleasure as always, sir. Thank you.
Pleasure was mine, my friend, and you will never convince me that Vitinha didn't intentionally miss that penalty because he felt bad that it was awarded in the first place. That was one of the worst penalties ever. So credit to him for intentionally missing it.
The penalty nobody wanted, and he acted accordingly. I like
did.
it. Good narrative. Very good indeed. Graham Ruthven, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey. I am willing to praise UEFA. Tickets, please, though. Tickets, please, for that Munich final. Well done, Alexander Sefrin.
Oh, gosh. I've got to go
Hey,
take a
if you're
shower
doing
now.
it for CBS and whoever you were doing it for earlier in the season, I'm willing to do it for a Munich ticket.
Hey, UEFA, CBS, praise where praise due, all and around. Listener, thank you very much indeed for joining us on this episode. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show if you'd like to praise us. But for now, bye!